College Drury campus from 9 until 12 to talk about the strategic direction of Ford Pinellas for the coming year, including our work to align our transportation plan with PSTA's community bus plan. So I would encourage you all to join us for that.
And where is it again?
It's St. Pete College, Drury Street campus.
Okay, we're all set.
I'll be glad to share an agenda with you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what time did it start?
9 o'clock.
9,
Well, thanks.
Okay. And Courtney, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I don't think there's anyone else here, so welcome.
This is Natalie and Ron joining.
Hi, Natalie and Ron.
How are you doing?
Doing just fine so far. How are you doing?
I'm cold.
What's the temperature there today?
It's in the 40s.
It's probably been in the 40s, maybe now it's probably up to the maybe low 50s.
All right,
Oh.
well, not that far along.
It's getting there.
All right, that's not as bad as it could be.
That's true. I'm just whining it.
All right, well, thank you for joining us, and we are going to move on to action items, which are the November 1st meeting minutes. And who else joined us?
Hello, Madam Chairman. This is Harry. How are you?
Oh, hello, Harry. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Are you in Washington?
I am. I just got back this morning, so I should have stayed in Florida. It's cold up here. I'm gonna have freezing rain and snow this afternoon.
Yeah.
great.
What's the temperature where you are?
I think it's about 30 or 31 right now.
See that, Ron and Natalie? It could be worse.
You got us beat, yes.
Hey, they had snow in Tallahassee this last week.
Yeah.
So I heard, and Commissioner Justice and I have just decided we're awfully happy that we're not in Tallahassee today.
Or any other day.
Yeah, or any other day.
Snowing.
Did someone else just join us?
Hey, Commissioner, it's Alan and RJ in Tallahassee.
Hello, Alan and RJ. Thank you for joining us. We are on the minutes, and we are about to approve them. And before we do, I have one correction that I would like to bring to your attention, and hopefully you will agree with me. In the first paragraph under information items, it speaks to Mr. Pierce reported that the appropriation as is being finalized, and Senator Latvala will champion the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit in the House. I think we need Representative Latvala, don't we?
Yes.
Yes.
So can we please make that change? And is there anything else that needs to be changed that we are aware of right now? Anyone?
No, move approval as amended.
It has been moved and approved by Commissioner Justice and seconded by Councilor Wheeler Brown. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. And now we are on legislative items 4A, legislative trips. Brad?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And good afternoon. Happy New Year, everybody. Well, I thought first we would maybe just hear a little bit about two very successful trips that we have already had this session. We back in November, or sort of late November, we went to Tallahassee, and Commissioners Barkley and Toinga joined me, who are here with us on our committee now, and we sort of introduced our adopted state priorities, of which the number one item on our list is a $475,000 request for a integrated transportation app on smartphones. And this would integrate PSTA, HART as regular transit, but also bike share programs, Uber, Lyft, Jolly Trolley, Clearwater Ferry, perhaps, Bicycles Built for Two, or whatever, all into one one-stop shop, not only where you could plan your trip using multiple modes, which is what people like to do now, but also pay for all those different modes. You would, like some apps are on your phone, you would put your credit card information and you would load up your account and you could pay for an Uber ride or a bus ride or a ferry boat ride anywhere in the Tampa Bay. That's the idea behind this. It's gotten strong support. When we went to Tallahassee was during a stressful time, as we all know, for the Latvalas, and so the item that you just corrected in the minutes was corrected again, but after our meeting, where that was the plan, to have Chris Latvala submit our project. He was unable to do that because he was not going to be in Tallahassee at the time of when it was due. So Representative Sprouse suggested and asking Representative Ahern if he would put it in, and he did. So Representative Ahern, my understanding was, did file the ask for the smartphone app. We also have on our list increased transportation disadvantage funds.
Amanda has been working on this bill for 20 years.
I think Patty Johnson's been working on that for 20 years. Transportation disadvantage. The Clearwater Beach Express to Tampa International Airport, which is a holdover, and funding in the FDOT work program once the design for the Clearwater Beach Busway, once the design is done, for funding to be included to construct it. That's what we advocated for back in November. We've had some very positive discussions about the app with legislators when we were there and since then. And we are now planning, we now have a trip planned, our second trip to Tallahassee planned for next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm very excited that Commissioner Johnson will be coming with me. She was going to come our last trip, but was unable to do so, but she'll be coming next week, as well as Pat Gerard will be coming with me to Tallahassee. Ron or Natalie, do you want to say anything about our planned trip or the prior trip that I left out?
Well, the upcoming trip, we have already begun doing the itinerary as we've always done, starting to set those meetings, and we'll have something as we progress through this week to share with you guys. But we will follow the same general model that we've done in the past. We will attempt to secure a one-on-one for our dinner. We will obviously do our standard 15-minute one-on-one meeting, leapfrog through the day. As far as, I think that, some of the highlights from the last trip were, the one-on-one time that we've had with some of the members. I know that Ben Diamond really appreciated the time we spent with him, but I think you covered it well.
Okay. There's other, obviously, some of you might be going to Tallahassee with other groups, or perhaps the county, or the Florida Association of Counties, I know, and the Florida League of Cities has trips to Tallahassee. I know the St. Pete Chamber is going at the end of January, and then I'll be going back again for the Florida Public Transit Day, which is unfortunately the day after February 15th. So I had to go through quite a few approvals to get up there on the 14th by my wife. So I'll be hanging out in Tallahassee on those days. But to the extent that you are going up there, I want to make sure that you're aware of the priorities that PSTA is pushing, and that we would arm you with enough of these forms, and you could incorporate in when you're having your 15-minute discussions with our delegation, I mentioned, to support these projects in the Tampa Bay for transit too.
I have a question. It's Patty, and who do you have lined up? And do you have Brandis lined up for us?
Brandis is on the list, but at this point, they are not scheduling the meetings quite yet. As you know, that their schedules are set for them just days out, so we will not have an itinerary for you for a few more days. But yes, Brandis is on the list, and we will have Brandis.
Okay, and Ruslan?
Yes. Your delegation members are all being invited for meetings.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
Moving on now to the federal, to the planned federal trips. We had also a very successful trip already to Washington, D.C., where our chairman of this committee and our chairman of PSTA now, Commissioner Long, and myself, and it was planned on our chair at the time, Darden Rice, to come, but she was unable to come. But we were joined by Rick Holmans of the Tampa Bay Partnership, the CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership, and James Holton, the governor's appointee and chair of TBARDA in Washington. Myself and Heather Stobush on PSTA staff attended, and we had another packed day of meetings with what we focused on was meetings with people in the federal administration. So this was with higher-ups at the Department of Transportation, of course. We met with our specific contacts at the Federal Transit Administration, and then we also had meetings with the Office of Management and Budget, introducing them to our bus rapid transit project in St. Petersburg, our Central Avenue BRT, because we have now submitted that project to the feds, being the first one in Tampa Bay's history to do so, and now they are reviewing it and hopefully going to include the $22 million that we need from the federal government to fund that project in the president's upcoming fiscal year 19 budget, and then the 19 budget the Congress ultimately has to approve. So the timing of going around December 1st was when they're putting their budget together. Of course, the president officially presents that to the Congress at the State of the Union address, and then Congress does what they do with it, and then they make up their own budget. The issue was the 18 budget, which started fiscal year 18 for the federal government, started on October 1st. Congress has not approved a budget for 18 yet. They've been doing continuing resolutions, and I can't remember, but I'm sure Harry knows the date in which it's in January where they've extended it to. So hopefully they will approve an 18 budget and then move on so that when we go the next time to DC in March, or planned, and maybe even this summer, we'll be focused on making sure the bus rapid transit project is included in the 19 budget. Harry, do you want to add anything about that trip or the game plan for our next trip?
So, looking backwards at the trip, it was a very good trip in December. The group did a great job. I think it was great to have PSTA there with representatives from the community. I think that really made an impact at the Department of Transportation and at OMB. The one thing we did pick up from the Department of Transportation was they were really excited about the BRT project. It was specifically made a point in our meeting with the FTA folks that this administration looks more favorably upon rubber-wheeled vehicles than light rail or heavy rail vehicles. They like the idea of a BRT because they see it as more cost-effective and more flexible, that you can alternate or move routes or move the buses to another route. So they really like the BRT. We got good positive feedback. They like the size of the project. They like the partnership with the local and the state money. So it was very good, I think, reception from the folks there. I guess the biggest hurdle that Brad kind of talked about was President Trump, when he announced his budget last year for the current fiscal year, not only did he not include any new small starts projects, he basically wanted to eliminate the capital investment grant program at the FTA. So his opinion was that these are local responsibilities and not the responsibility of the federal government. The House and the Senate both have included funding for the CIG program and for small starts in their respective appropriations bills for the year. which Brad also noted is not done yet. Congress is working under a stopgap continuing resolution until January 19th. The hope was that they were going to finish up by January 19th, but it's clearly not going to happen, so they'll have to go under another continuing resolution probably into early to mid-February to try again to get their appropriations bills done. And one of the things we also heard from FTA in our meeting there was they need some clarification from Congress because the President didn't want to pursue any small starts projects. Congress has included funding for small starts projects in their appropriations bills, but they didn't specify where the money was to be spent. And that's partly, or mainly, because Congress can't earmark spending anymore for projects. And so they can appropriate money to the agencies, but the agencies have to decide how to spend the money. So for the current fiscal year, when they wrap up, we're in a little bit of a uncharted territory here, and that Congress is going to provide money to the FTA for small starts, but they're not going to tell them how to spend it. The administration is not inclined to want to spend the money, and so there's this push and pull on what they're going to do. So we're encouraging the Appropriations Committee in their final, whatever their final bill is when they get to it in February, to put some language in there to somehow force the FTA to spend the small starts money in fiscal year 18, which will kind of set the precedent for what they're going to do then in fiscal year 19. And then Brad also mentioned the President's budget. It'll probably come up, the State of the Union is scheduled for January 30th. He follows that speech in early February. It's the first Tuesday in February, submitting his budget to Congress. If he's on schedule, that'll happen. And the question will be whether there will be any small starts requested in that budget or not. We're hoping there will, but we don't know. We'll keep working on that. So I think our goal in March, when you all come up, is see how Congress resolved the fiscal year 18 budget, talk to our elected officials about the importance of the Small Starts program and the Capital Investment Grant program in general. As a side note, I don't know if Brad shared it with you, we just got a copy of the letter on Friday. Senator Nelson signed a letter to the Appropriations Committee and the administration saying that he's one of the, I think, 22 members that signed a letter urging the continued support for the Capital Investment Grant program. So our meeting with Senator Nelson in December obviously had an impact because he signed that letter, which is one of the asks we made at the time. But the other thing we'd like to do in December is hopefully there is not an FTA administrator, has not been confirmed yet. And so hopefully by the time you all get here in March, there's an FTA administrator on board. We'd like to schedule a meeting with him or her. We'd also like to try and schedule a meeting with the Secretary of Transportation if we could to go in and talk about this project and why it's important and why it's kind of historic in the Tampa Bay area, and it's kind of a precursor to other investments in transportation for the area. So I think the March timeframe will be good. Hopefully the Congress is done with this year's appropriations bill, but we'll see. Brad, did I leave anything out, Brad?
No, thank you for providing some clarity to the morass of Washington, D.C. activities. So as we've discussed a little bit at the PSTA board, when we were in Washington with the Tampa Bay Partnership and T-BARTA, I think we successfully positioned the Central Avenue BRT as this first project as a catalyst project for a bigger, more regional transportation system to come, and hopefully in the future. As you know, T-BARTA has been newly created. Commissioner Long is on T-BARTA from representing PSTA, and has a new mission to develop a regional transit system. And while there's a lot of questions that people have about exactly how that's going to work, considering that T-BARTA has a relatively small staff and limited or difficult funding situation to keep their organization going, the idea is that a regional body would oversee this new premium transit, and that even though the Central Avenue project is only in one county, it's only in Pinellas County, it would be a regional project, or it would be the first of a network of regional projects that would stretch across the Tampa Bay. And that point was well taken in Washington, and then we agreed as a contingent that went to DC to try to follow that up with some some news stories that echoed that same theme, that we have a successful project here in Pinellas County, and that it can be the start of something bigger. And to that end, we had I think a pretty positive Tampa Bay Business Journal article right after the trip ended about the trip. And then later this week, the same group, the Tampa Bay Partnership, T. Barta, and Chairman Long and myself will be going to the Tampa Bay Times editorial board later this week to talk to them about this idea that we're starting with this, but it's working, going to be hopefully expanded into a region-wide effort. We have a lot of interest from the PSTA board in coming to Washington, D.C. I'm not necessarily certain why. Less interest in going to Tallahassee, but maybe, I think I do understand that. I think the folks that came in December all offered to come back again. Both Rick Holmans and Jim Holton both offered to come back again, and I think they're having those leaders there was very positive. But I think it will be important for us to have, since we're really focused when we go to Washington D.C. on the Central Avenue BRT project, it's important to have representatives from, obviously, PSTA board members, including someone that can represent either, St. Petersburg, because the project is in St. Petersburg. So hopefully either Darden or Lisa can come with us on that trip, planned now for March.
I haven't heard a word about TD in Washington and getting funds.
Well, the Transportation Disadvantage Program, the formal program, is a state program, so we'll be talking a lot about it next week when we're in Tallahassee.
We don't have federal funds that come in from Washington for TD?
We do not. We do not.
Maybe it's time we did.
Perhaps. Now, I mean, certainly there's obviously Medicaid and Medicare transportation dollars that we can advocate for that are, when they come here,
Gone.
Gone, yeah. They used to fall under the Transportation Disadvantage Program.
Yes, they did.
So there's some precedence for federal participation in that, but
Yes, big time.
they've been gone now for a couple of years now, though.
And we're feeling it.
And I don't think that, I think that was actually a state decision. That was not something that the feds did to us in that regard, but.
Hey, Brad, it's Harry. One other thing, just a side note that may be a topic for March is, as you probably read about, the president's supposed to announce sometime later this month his more detail about what he's looking to do on an infrastructure plan. There have been all kinds of stories about what he might or might not ask for. There's a good chance Congress will work on an infrastructure bill in the first half of this year. And so the fact that you're going to be here in March is a good opportunity to talk about that, maybe talk about how small starts and TIG program are important components of federal of transportation and transit infrastructure. So I think, again, it's good that you'd be coming in March. After we'll be here, you'll be at the APTA conference. I'm sure they'll talk about that then. But also having our community represented there, St. Petersburg and the Tampa Bay area community, I think will be helpful in talking about why this is important for communities like Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay area. So that would be another subject I think we want to talk about in March.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry.
Madam Chair, if I could mention one other topic that we did discuss when we were in Washington that I think is quite interesting. I don't know where it might end up, but maybe we can follow up again in March. PSTA's maintenance director, Henry Lukasik, who oversees maintaining our vehicles, those of you who know him, he's quite technically knowledgeable. He's been participating in a industry committee of some sort for the last several years. It's been looking at the possibility of taking the electric buses that we will soon be having and the hybrid electric vehicles that we already have, buses, and seeing if the technology that's in those vehicles could be reversed essentially to send electricity outward from the generators that are on those buses, so that they could act as an emergency generator. And they could be basically have a plug on the side of them that you could plug in, and they could act as like a generator, a mobile generator, especially during hurricanes. So apparently some of the staff and some of the members of the Senate Banking Committee that oversees transportation have caught wind of this idea and heard of this potential. And so I had a meeting when we were up there in DC with the lead Senate banking staff and presented them our idea and offered that PSTA would provide one of our vehicles as a test for this technology. We met our partner that makes the hybrid transmissions, the generators that are in our hybrid fleet, and they also make electric transmissions, is BAE Systems, and they had their lobbyist there at the meeting as well. BAE, I guess, has invented this technology and has done it one time on a Humvee in Iraq that also had a hybrid kind of engine, so they know it can be done. So the Senate staff thought this was something that would appeal to, would be another way that public transportation investment could appeal to other people. It would be another benefit of public transit if they could be used even in a different way during times of emergency. So I think this might be a pretty neat project to explore.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, without getting too far off our agenda, Ron and Natalie, what on earth are we going to do with Representative Sproul's bill on special taxing districts?
This is Natalie. Ron had to step away. We apologize. We have multi commitments up here. We're getting ready for tomorrow. So we've talked with Sproul. He actually filed it on behalf of Met. I don't think we really know. He did not believe that.
I'm sorry. On behalf of who?
Nets.
Met.
Who?
Representative Met.
Where's he
Mets.
from?
Okay.
Where's he from?
I can look. I'm not positive. Sorry. I can pull it up if it's important. Hold on. Met is from. Larry Metz is from Groveland area. He's got district office over in that area. I'm not sure exactly where he lives, but so we met with Sprouse, and Sprouse, he did not realize the impact because he did not believe that he wasn't aware that there was taxing authority within the purview of PSTA. That obviously was not an intended consequence of what he's doing. We don't believe that actually changes the direction of what he's doing with the bill. But based on our conversation, he's not married or wed to this policy, and based on our conversation, we do not expect and don't think that he expects that this is actually going to be moving forward. So again, I think it was probably more he filed as a courtesy. We will obviously continue to talk with him, but we are not anticipating a lot of activity on this. I don't know if you guys have been following the CRC in general. There's been a lot of turmoil, maybe the wrong word, but there's been a lot of discourse that has gone on, and I don't think that, that they've been mired in a lot of their own controversies, but we don't believe that this bill, in particular, this proposal is going to move forward.
Does it have a number yet?
69.
Okay.
They all have numbers.
Well, I thought so, but.
Well, Natalie,
And
I
there's
think
a-
it would be really critical for you and Ron to keep us abreast of that bill, and if it does start to move, because it affects quite a few taxing districts within our county, and the one that comes to my mind immediately is our juvenile welfare board piece. That's a special taxing district. And what about the special taxing districts we have for fire and EMS? I mean, our libraries, there's a bunch of them that come to mind. So can you please put that on your list of things to track for us?
It's already been tracked.
Thank you very much. And I had one more thing I was going to ask you to, I don't know, it just went right out of my head. So while it's on vacation at the moment, let's move to the T-BARTA Strategic Transit Feasibility Study is being released here shortly. I know they're coming to see me, I think it's at the end of the week, to get my input, and then it's going to the TMA. Do you know what the date is?
January 19th.
January 19th. So you'll all be hearing a lot about that. And I'm sure that we'll have some additional conversation to have with you and Ron, Natalie, as that all flushes out.
Correct.
Right, yeah. Ron, you're both really up to date on all that T-BARTA stuff anyway, right?
Ron more so than me, but yes, Ron is active on that issue, and anytime there's something you guys need to know, he makes sure you know it.
Good.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Bill.
What is the status of that? Is that to issue the contract to do it, or is this the completion of the strategic plan?
Are you talking about the,
T-BARTA.
well, that's the transit feasibility study
Okay.
that they're releasing this week.
Well, I thought Bruce, you could describe, didn't the T-BARTA board have a strategic planning kind of workshop or something before Christmas?
We did. We're getting the policy committee is getting ready to meet again. And basically, that was to outline where we're going with the recruitment for the chair, and the fact that we voted on taking ownership of the feasibility study. And there are ongoing activities, and I don't know if Whit wants to speak to it at all, but there have been quite a few discussions at various levels about who is going to lead the initiative going forward. And it was pointed out in several of the meetings that I've been in that clearly is the reason the legislature passed the T-BARTA bill that came out last year, so that there would be an agency that did lead the implementation of the plans. And so the MPOs and the TMA and the THEA and all the rest of the different acronyms that are quasi-governmental agencies working on transportation solutions, there has to be an organization that pulls it all together and moves it forward with one voice and one mission. And hopefully it'll be the new T-BARTA board that does that. Did I say that all right, Whit?
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership, but I agree you need one agency pushing that forward. And I think T-BARTA is poised to do that.
Yeah.
They've set the stage for doing that.
In concert with the
In support with the
MPOs.
MPOs, right?
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Bill?
Well, I'm still a little confused. The regional transit feasibility study
Mm-hmm.
was funded by DOT under the HART sponsorship. And so what I hear you saying is that T-BARTA is now accepting the sponsorship, the ownership for that study.
Yes, we were asked by UpDOT to do that, and that's
Okay.
what we did, and I believe it was our last
It
meeting.
was, I think in December, at your
Yeah.
strategic plan.
The holidays came and went, and so did a lot of my brain just still was on vacation. But yeah, we did vote on that, and we are moving forward.
Is T-BARTA then trying to push it in a way that would get more public involvement in the need statement?
Well, there is an advisory group that's in place to advise T-BARTA.
Who is the advisory group?
If I can try to answer that a
Well,
little bit.
there's a few people in there. I don't know them all personally.
The contract with Hart, which has Jacobs as their consultant, is going to have this next year where they're focusing on public outreach and public involvement. And that's really stemming from the January TMA leadership group meeting on the 19th, and then followed that, the T-BARTA meeting, I think, on the 26th. That's really where the plan is going to be outlined in detail. And they have they've begun individual one-on-one briefings with the TMA leadership group and maybe others. I just know about those.
And so basically, Bill, if I might, your questions are a bit premature. Because again, we had quite a bit of downtime over the holidays. Now everybody's ramping up again, right?
Yeah, and I think it's T-BARTA then to take that recommendation and then work that plan as a development, phasing, operating program. And you'll probably see that take shape in the latter half of 2018 to 2019.
And we are working on identifying funding sources and sustainability dollars for T-BARTA as well as for our projects, of which one is the BRT line.
Correct.
Because that's kind of the beginning of the spine.
The concern that I've had over this last year has been that Hart and Jacobs have been coming up with a solution to a problem that hasn't been vetted in the community first. And I just would share that for your information.
Well, to that, I just respectfully couldn't disagree with you more, because throughout the entire region, we have been talking about the transportation issues and problems for as long as I've been on the county commission, if not before. Through the Move Pinellas Forward, you had a couple of, what was that you did at the college? I know I was there, I don't remember what you called it, in May.
Oh yeah, we had a work session that really asked people what they wanted to see happen for the region. So I think we've gotten a lot of good input.
Yeah.
I think Councilmember Johnson makes some good points, though, because this is really a plan that doesn't surprise anybody, because a lot of it's been talked about for a long time. These are corridors that make a lot of sense for our region. So they've kind of put the technical work together, and now they're going out to explain the technical work and the rationale. And I think there's a difference of opinion about which should have gone first, but here we are. And we're about to have a very robust conversation with the public. And it's going to be tied in with our long-range transportation plan and with the Tampa Bay Next conversation that DOT is having. So there's going to be no shortage of opportunities for people to weigh in and understand the trade-offs of how we grow, how we develop, and what that means for our transportation networks.
And so, to your point, just expand it a little further. My understanding from all of the meetings that I've been privy to is that this, the transit feasibility study is being driven by tons of data, right? Both economic and transportation and environmental and all the different factions coming together. So it's not just one group of people deciding, oh, I think it should go here or wherever. There's just a whole bunch of data that has come together through the efforts of this technical group to identify what the most feasible, amenable plan could be for our region.
Mr. Pringle, at the last TMA meeting, showed an update on the feasibility plan, and in his update, he had one slide that said that congestion will increase in this area by 56%, and road miles will only increase by 19%. That's the only data that I have seen that relates to the need within the community. I haven't seen information about the cost, the effect on the cost of milk that you get at your house, or the time it takes to get your air conditioner fixed, or the other aspects of the impact on the average citizen. Several years ago, there were some Duke Energy or Progress Energy came through and said, this is the impact of having this poor transportation system on our fleet and the cost of your electricity. It's that kind of a need discussion that I would see would be valuable in convincing those in the middle to say, oh yeah, we'll support this, rather than, oh, we don't understand why you
Well,
did that.
and I hear you, Bill, and I'm totally on board with what you're saying. For those of us that drive back and forth from Pinellas to Hillsborough, it doesn't take much more than that experience for you to know we've got a big problem here. I just came off a year of being chair of the Tourist Development Council, and I find these numbers absolutely frightening, because this year, 2017, that we've just ended, 20 million new visitors came through Tampa Bay. In the next 5 years, the projection is 34 million new visitors. Now, can anybody not articulate that that is an untenable burden on our infrastructure, primarily transportation? I mean, the numbers are just almost unbelievable, you know? So from that perspective alone, I think this is something we have to take really seriously. Yes.
Well, for those taxpayers that are in support of all of this, I still do not know who is doing TD. I haven't seen any reports on TD. What do I need to do? A dance?
A happy dance.
Well, as you know, TD is a very poorly funded program, and there isn't one regional agency charged with that. So we have the Tri-County Local Coordinating Board that does meet to coordinate across county lines, but we suffer from a painful lack of funding with TD.
But not only a painful lack of funding, but a painful lack of
awareness.
Well, awareness, yes. There has to be somebody that stands up on the table and says, hello,
Yeah.
we're out here, and that's what taxes are all about, is providing transportation for those persons that are transportation disadvantaged. And it isn't happening. Hasn't happened. Haven't heard a word.
How are those issues addressed in other parts of our country?
Well, they're addressed differently in every state. They really are. And at least in Florida, there is an amalgam of different transportation planning agencies and providers that deal with the Transportation Disadvantage Program. PSTA is a big part of that entity. They're the community transportation coordinator, so you know, it definitely takes a partnership. We are going to be having that conversation in a very big way with our long-range transportation plan. We're just kicking that effort off this year. So it'll be a big part of the conversation, and we'd like to engage you in the messaging of that.
I certainly want to be there, because when I went to meet with them in their annual meeting, they're also, all of the transportation providers for transportation disadvantaged across the entire state are on a different page. So there's 62 counties. There are 67 counties. There are 67 different versions.
And that's part of the problem.
Of what it is, how to deal with it, where the money comes from. It's just...
Yeah.
I'll just add that I think we, you know, thanks in large part to you, Ms. Johnson, but PSTA has become known, at least not, unfortunately not by, I would say, every senator and representative up there, but I would say by certainly the TD commissioners as the, and Pinellas County in general, as the
Giving
one
them
county of
knowledge.
the 67 that is actually trying to do some things to
Yeah.
help our folks that are designated as transportation disadvantaged. Our TD late shift program, getting people jobs that they could not have without transportation to and from those jobs late at night and a leg up into the system, is exactly what I know we verbalize, but we have made little videos that we've shown them, and and beautiful one pagers talking about that, testimonials from some of those people, and that has had an impact.
But even if we're gonna do it regionally, Tampa said, when we were up there, Hillsborough said, while we were up there, we didn't know you could do that. Pascal wasn't there, so
I know.
we couldn't talk about it. But they said, how do we do that? How do we get involved with that? So they're waiting.
That's why you're such a good advocate. You have to keep on talking. More.
Okay, but we need it.
Yeah. I don't think anyone here disagrees, right?
Let me know, Whit.
Will do. Keep you posted.
All right, did we answer your questions, Bill? Kind of, sort of, maybe?
Well, I at least
By the time we
shared my,
meet,
my view and my concern,
and by the time we meet again, I dare say we'll have some more meat on those bones.
Yeah.
Won't we, Whit?
We will.
Yeah. All right, so now what? Future meeting subjects, Brad?
I think we covered the items that I hoped we would cover. I wanted to have some discussion about this idea that T-BARTA is sort of taking on this new role in 2018. We're going to be going down to we're going to try to become leaders in that effort to push to make sure that happens, because they have an ask in Tallahassee for, I guess, $1 million that would provide some stable funding for T-BARTA to exist for the first time. And so having some well-placed media articles and then more and more discussions about it locally and support of it locally, I think was the only way that T-BARTA is going to be able to get off the ground. And these ideas that we have definitely need our support, or else they just won't happen. So that, I think, is just as much as our own priorities. We will also be talking to legislators in Tallahassee about how we do think we're making a lot of great progress in working together better regionally than ever before, and a strong T-BARTA to sort of be the umbrella organization over all the different providers would be a good thing for TD and
Are we on other?
congestion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
We're on other?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I got to be in leadership this year.
Leadership in Ellis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we went to Dunedin, and Julie met with us, Julie Boljinski, telling us how proud she was that you guys are giving her $42 million. Is that right? For, I don't know whether it's right
Not
or
yet.
wrong. What I'm
Not
gonna-
yet.
What I'm
It ain't a
going,
done deal.
what I'm going to ask you is, how can we qualify for the bed tax? Because, wait, before you say no, because when you do a project, how do you expect people to get there?
And just so you know, I am not.
I'm begging.
I am not saying no. I think that we have a responsibility to talk about those bed tax dollars in a very new and different way. And Senator Brandis, if you don't know, has filed a bill in the Senate, and there is a House bill on the House side, I forgot who has that one, to open up the bed tax, to talk about using it for transportation, infrastructure, sewers, water. What else is in there, Charlie, do you remember? I have a copy of it in my other iPad, which I don't have here today. I apologize. So I think that conversation is going to take place, and surely in a county that has as much tourism as we do, some of those dollars should be, in my opinion, allocated towards transportation. And We did have a very robust conversation on the TDC advisory board this past year, and they did agree that as long as we left the 60%, 60-40 formula in place, and we didn't touch their 60%, which is allocated for marketing and advertising, they would be amenable to having a conversation about taking some dollars from the 40%. Now, with that said, if you take some of those dollars towards the 40%, that means that some of the other things that we fund out of that money, we would have to take it away from, and therein is the predicament. But those of us that are doing public policy in this county, whether it be a city or a county, know that the needs are, what is that, infinite, and the resources are finite. Did I say that right? Yeah.
That's great, but I think that all the hotels would tell you, you know, if we could put the bus map and know that the bus was coming and was going to do things, Jolly Trolley, they have no problem with putting, you know, the Jolly Trolley will be here in 20 minutes and so on and so forth. And everywhere I've gone, Boston, everywhere, I could take the trolley, bus, whatever it was, to whatever.
Well, we've all had those experiences, Patty.
You can't do it here.
Seriously, why do you think we're so passionate about what we're doing here? That's part
why
of
I
the
was
problem.
asking for that.
But the hoteliers are the ones that make up the board of the TDC, so,
Understood.
yeah. So stay tuned, because that conversation is likely to get a lot of legs as we go forward.
Certainly is.
They're the ones that want to get more people coming here to congest our roads even further.
And use the sewers.
That's
To be-
true.
to be
However,
fair-
if they don't have a good experience while they're here,
Yes.
they won't come back.
Right.
Commissioner Justice.
Just to be fair, to the tourists do pay 1/3 of our penny for Pinellas
That's right.
taxes, so they've paid for 1/3 of the roads and 1/3 of the bridge and 1/3 of some of those other projects. So it's not a complete
Right.
program loss on it. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll get them.
Very good point. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. Anything else over here? Any other ideas for funding? Lisa?
No, ma'am.
No? You have to
Lisa
get
and
more-
I are just
Well,
going
I'm
to
on,
spend it.
yeah.
You have to get more
TD.
creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. John?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay then. Anything else for the good of the order?
Hey, Commissioner Terry,
Yeah.
did I hear, is Whit in the room with you guys?
Yes,
He
he
is.
is.
Hey, Whit, it's Harry. Is it possible you have a minute after this so we could talk by phone about something else?
Sure.
He
We have
said
an
yes.
issue related to those flashing yellow crossing walk signs.
Yes, right.
I just need to ask you about that. Brad has my cell phone number, or if somebody sends me your number, I can give you a call either way.
Okay, I can give you a call after this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Ron, Natalie, do you have anything else? Oh, I guess they hung up. Well, thank you, Harry. Give our regards to Steve, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Ready?
And if there's nothing else for the good of the order, anything? No? No? All right then. We are adjourned. When do you need Harry's number?
I'll get it from Brad.
Oh, okay, well, be that way.
Oh, if you have it handy. Sure.
I do.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
I need those flashing lights lit for the horses to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. They serve real value.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Are the horses pretty good at pushing the button?
Yeah, they
The
are.
horses' riders are great. Oh,
Oh,
yes.
the
Are you
riders
kidding?
push the button. I thought it was the horses.
Not